So why don't I just grab a still and apply it to this one over here? So let's go to our gallery over here. Let's just scrub over top of these stills and see which ones look good. And yeah, I think that same first still that we were working with at first, that one looks really good to me. I think it might be a bit too saturated for my liking. Let's make this node tree a bit more simple. So I'll just select both of these nodes here, delete them. I don't know if I want those for now. Let's go to the LUT, turn it on and off, see how big of a difference it's making. Looks good. I would say maybe it's a bit too intense for my liking. Let's just close off the keyframe window here. So I'll just minimize it. And let's bring the gain down on this. That looks much better in my opinion. It was a bit too intense previously, but I don't even think we're going to need to really make any adjustments to this. I feel really good about this. It looks good. Shift D to turn it all off, back on. Looks sick. I'm loving it. Let's apply that same grade to this next clip by right clicking on it, selecting it just like that. Looks good to me. And of course, we can apply this LUT to this group, this dirt biking group. And if at any point we want to make an adjustment to this entire group, we can choose to make these adjustments either pre or post clip level. So in this case, if I wanted to brighten up everything, I could do that pre clip level. So any adjustments that I make here will affect all of the other ones. So if I wanted to slightly brighten things up, I'd be making those same adjustments to all the other clips within that same group. Now this is pretty minor. I don't think I'm actually going to want to make adjustments on all of these clips here as a group. I just created a group in case I wanted to do that, because in a lot of situations that will save you a lot of time to just be able to make adjustments pre and post clip to a group of clips instead of having to make them each individually, especially on longer projects. But in this case, this is a pretty short project. There's not that many clips, and I don't really have that big of an issue with middle mouse clicking on the clips that I want to apply grades from. It's pretty chill in this scenario. It's really only like a minute long video, but you know, if you're working on something that's an hour long or whatever, group clips and also remote grades are going to be huge for you. So I'm just going to reset this node here in the pre-group clip node tree, and let's apply this same grade to all the other dirt bike clips as well. So we have one over here, this first one. Let's apply this to it right away. That looks great. Same environment. I don't really even feel like I need to make any changes. I might want to increase the offset of the primaries here. Minor, very minor, just bringing a little bit more light to it. I almost feel like the primaries, yeah, they're a bit dark, so let's brighten them up. I'm noticing that the primaries here, they're at -300 on temperature. I think that's a bit too cool. I like it a little bit warmer, even warmer, honestly, probably at 0. That looks good to me. Why don't we compare these? So I'll select these other clips over here. I'll go to split screen, take a look at all of them. This one, tiny bit warmer than these other ones, but these clips are separated by the acro clips over here in between them. So not really an issue at all. No one's gonna notice. And I kind of like the warmth in this one here, but I do like these ones a bit cooler. Let's turn split screen off. Cool. And now what we could do is just apply these grades to other clips and see how they look. So with this surfing clip selected, let's apply this grade. Looks good. I feel like it looks a bit too green. So let's head over to primaries, bring up the tint. It's definitely a bit too cool as well. And let's remove, we'll reset these nodes over here. Also the skin tone node, Shift D, turn it on and off. Maybe we bring the intensity of the LUT up a little bit, maybe to 0.5. That looks good to me. Primaries, I'm gonna warm it up a tiny bit too. I like the warmer vibe. Looks good to me. There might be, blacks might be a little bit crushed. I'm not sure. Let's check the waveform. So we're approaching it, but we're not actually clipping anything, which is fine. We're definitely clipping some of these highlights in the water here, but I'm not too fussed. I actually like it. I like the way that this looks. I feel good about that. Let's move on to the next clip. Apply this same grade over to this one. Looks good to me. I think the greens, maybe we should isolate the greens, maybe play around with those. We could probably experiment with this clip a bit more. So with this top clip over here selected, I'll grab my qualifier. I'll select the greens. Oh, and you see I had the subtraction picker subtract. So I got to make sure that I have just the regular picker on. So let's make sure that we got that selected. Shift A to show us what we have selected. And I don't want the skin tones. I really just want more of the greens here. Let's play around with saturation or the hue. Let's remove those skin tones that do not want the skin tones. It's really just that area there. That looks pretty good. Let's play around with luminance, see if we can refine it even more. Okay, cool. Let's clean that up a bit. Clean white. Blur radius. Cool. Shift A. Let's play around with this. We can either bring down the tint a bit. Nice. That looks pretty good to me. Minimal, but it takes away like that pink look. There's like this tint of pink on things, and we're kind of taking that out by applying a bit of a green tint to everything. That looks good to me. I'm wondering this I don't know if it looks too great to me. It looks all right. What could we do to make this image a little bit better? I think maybe if we play around with the primaries a bit, we can kind of just experiment to see how things look. Now, of course, we can't do anything too drastic right now because it will affect our selection that we made of our greens over here. I'm going to have to learn how to spell greens. So, yeah, this looks pretty good to me. The face might be a little bit too overexposed, and we can use the magic mask just like we did in the previous lesson on this exact clip to actually bring down the exposure on his face. That should be pretty easy. But other than that, I would say this looks pretty good. Again, let's take a look at what these greens are doing over here. And why don't I just compare this to the previous clip just to see what things look like. Yeah, minimal. It's a minimal adjustment. It gets the job done. You can see just how far we've taken this image. Pretty far. I'm wondering if maybe I should desaturate the sky a little bit just to see what it looks like. So I'll grab the qualifier. Let's grab the sky. Too much. And let's play around with the luminance. Saturation. Hue, cool. Yeah, the hue is allowing us to pick up more of the sky there. That's what I want. Let's just blur it a little bit. Shift A, and let's desaturate it a tiny bit. Cool. That was before. After, maybe we can brighten it too. Just the sky. And brightening it kind of messes up the edges over here, so maybe we could blur it even more to kind of hide that. But we also don't even need to brighten it, so I can just bring that back down. Right click on it. This is before and after. I do like a bit of the desaturated look in the sky there, but it's all subjective, personal preference. Do what feels right to you. but that feels pretty good to me. Let's apply the same grade to the next clip over. Just by middle mouse clicking on this clip, I've applied that same grade. I feel like this one, you know, we're getting a lot of clipping in the sky. If we look at our scopes, we could see a lot of the information is getting cut out. So I'll go over to the primaries and I'll try to bring back some of that. Yeah, not too much success. There's no information up there, but that's fine. This is actually a clip that I did use in the actual official video. So it did make the cut, even though, you know, we are cutting out, even though we are clipping a lot of the bright parts of the image. Let's see, I'm gonna turn the LUT on and off. I feel like the LUT could probably be a bit more intense on this one. So I'll just bring up the exposure and just like that. Yeah, that looks a lot better to me. I'm happy with that. Let's play it. And of course, I always have loop on to make sure that it doesn't automatically jump to the next clip. I like to be able to just watch the clip that I'm focusing on. This all looks good to me. Let's turn these off here. Or what was this one selecting actually? Command D, Shift A. What are we selecting here? Okay, so this is this is from the sky in the previous clip. So we're making a selection of those blues. It actually does look better like this. We turn it on. So we're desaturating the blues. So this was meant for the sky in the previous clip. In this clip, we're applying that same desaturation to the water. And I do like it desaturated. That's a vibe. Other people, I know a lot of other people like the color, and the color is nice. It's nice and blue. The desaturated vibe is also really cool. I'm going to stick with that. I do like that for this clip. Let's go on to the next one. Let's apply the same grade. Way too dark over here. Let's take off this blue desaturation. I like it. We'll leave it on. So let's head over to our primaries. Let's bring the offset up just to brighten everything up. That looks good. Let's go over to the curves. Just give it a bit more contrast. I want those bright parts of my image even brighter, dark parts a little bit darker, not too dark. That looks pretty good to me. Yeah, this shot just looks crispy. I like it. Dan looks very nice and crisp. The water looks crispy. Everything looks good. The only thing is sky's blown out, but not really an issue because I like the way this looks. Subjective. Just because the sky's blown out does not mean we can't use the clip. So that looks pretty good to me. Why don't we head over to Lightbox? I like to head over here every once in a while and just take a look at everything, see how things look. Let's zoom in on some of these clips, see what things are looking like. So this underwater clip, I feel like we could probably apply this to these clips over here. So I can just middle mouse click on this one over here in Lightbox and apply them just like that. A little bit too contrasty, but we can go in and fix those. So Command Z. Let's remove these two over here. I feel like this LUT works best on this little fish clip here. So middle mouse click over here. We'll apply it to this one here. Let's exit Lightbox and head over to that fish clip. Shift D to see before and after. I really like that. I feel like maybe things are a little bit too green. Things might just have a bit more of a green tint to things, which is fine. Let's see what this node here is doing. Not much. Let's reset the node grade. We don't need that affecting anything. There's no greens in this clip, so we'll reset the greens as well over here. And what we could do, Shift D, let's take a look before and after again. I want to make things a bit more pink, so I want to take away that green tint. So we'll go over to our primaries over here. Let's make things a bit more pink. Doesn't look like that's doing too much. I'll play with the temperature too, just to find what looks good. This is before, this is after. I feel like that looks pretty good to me. Of course, you know, shooting underwater with an 8-bit phone, everything's very blue. I'm limited as to how much I can do, but even just that minimal change, adding a bit of that contrast, changing the color of the blue a little bit, makes it look cool. I like that. So Let's jump over to this next clip over here, apply that same grade. We can see we have a bit more color here. We have the seaweed here. It gives us that bit of orange. And then we also have a bit of pink in the background too. Not too much of a fan of that pink. I feel like that's the tint over here. We can see we're on the more pinkish side. So let's bring that down into the green. But then let's also bring the temperature down too, because I don't want things looking too warm. I'd like them to be a bit more blue. Shift D, turn that on and off. Same thing in our primaries. I'll go to my primary wheels over here. Let's bring up the lift a tiny bit. I feel like it's a little bit too dark, but not too much. I don't want to have that washed out look. I'm personally not the biggest fan. Let's go into the log wheels actually. Let's bring up the shadows. Try to just target just the shadows. Command D will turn our primaries on and off. We can see how much of a difference that's making. That looks pretty good to me. Let's compare these. Why don't we compare those with the underwater clip here and the above one here, just so that we can see the kind of vibe here. Okay, so shot of Dan above water. You can see it's a bit more pink when we compare it to these ones, but all of these are fully underwater, so it's totally fine for it to look a bit different. But now that I look at it, I do feel like it might be a little bit too pink now. And where is that coming from? Yeah, it's coming from our primaries here. So I'm actually just going to turn down the output, the key output of our primaries here, so it's not as strong. I'm actually just going to turn the primaries off. I feel like it looks better like this. I don't know what adjustments were made in the primaries there, but I'm stoked with that. And what I could do is actually just make a version. So Command Y, color grading version is added. And then I could just enable this and Command B, switch between them. Two different versions, very similar looks, but I like the one where it's disabled. But just in case I have two different versions that I could play around with. But these underwater clips, they're looking pretty good now. I'll apply that same grade to this next clip over here. A little bit too bright probably on this one. Let's bring down that offset over here. Yeah, let's bring down the adjustments that we've made here. So I can see in my curves node over here, I'm bringing up the highlights a little bit too much. I'm not down for that. It's a little bit too bright. This looks a bit better. Shift D to turn that on and off. Still, we're losing a lot more information in the highlights over here. So let's take a look at which one of these nodes is affecting. I think our LUT might be a little bit too intense on this. 0.8 might be taking it too far. And let's bring the primaries. We'll bring the offset down a little bit just to darken everything. But I don't want to be losing too much information in my highlights over there. Shift D, turn that on and off. Let's compare it between these two. This one looks a bit greener to me. So what I could do is just bring down the temperature a tiny bit. And that looks good to me. Yeah, I'm happy with those. That works. Let's apply this same grade to all of these clips next to them. So select all of those, apply this grade. And right away, Shift D, turn that on and off. The LUT isn't doing too much here. Let's bump it up. Let's go to curves right next door and increase these curves. This is a very different environment from what we were just working with in the previous clip. Shift D, turn that on and off. That looks good to me. These clips are going to be too dark, so I'm going to apply this one that I just made to both of those. Much better. Let's take a look at this clip here too. That looks good. I would say it is a little bit dark, so let's go into our primaries here. Let's bring up the lift a tiny bit, but I don't want it to feel washed out. Just a little bit goes a long way. So that feels good to me. And if there's any other underwater stuff, I could probably apply this same grade to those as well. So let's try this one over here. Let's apply this grade. Way too intense. Let's undo that. And I'll probably want to just grade those individually. Now I do have some dirt bike clips here that we can also grade. So the dirt bike ones, we got one over here. I like these grades up here. So I will select this clip here, apply this grade to it. I will select this other dirt bike clip. Where is it? This one here. Let's apply this grade to it. Perfect. I can already see just from this thumbnail, I like the way that that looks. And let's play around here. Let's see what other clips could probably work well with this LUT. So I feel like this clip of Dan over here, let's apply this to it. And let's actually just take a look at that clip, see what it looks like. All right, so it looks like we have a clip on top of another clip here. That's why I'm seeing that thumbnail. So we gotta just ignore this clip. This one's not even actually in the timeline. But this clip here, we can apply this grade. Doesn't look good, so let's not use that one. But let's try applying it to this. This one looks pretty good. I'm stoked with that. The greens though, little bit intense. I actually like it. I prefer it without the tint change in the greens over here. So I'll go back to my primaries. Maybe I'll bring up the temperature a tiny bit. Much better, much better. This looks good to me. I'm stoked on this grade. This one actually looks really good. Let's grab that still. Let's go into our gallery and maybe we can apply this to some other clips in the timeline as well. Let's see what else we got here. Another surf shot. Let's apply that same one here. That looks great to me. I really like the way that that looks. Let's see what it looks like on this one. So middle mouse click, Shift D. Yeah, totally. It adds a bit more of like this pinkish hue to things. Makes things look a little bit more magical. If you look at those bubbles, makes things a bit more red, pinkish. I really like that. Remember, Shift Z is the shortcut to fit the image in your preview. Let's see what that looks like on some of the longboarding stuff as well. So I love that. I love the way that it makes the mountains look over there, but everything else is a bit too dark. So let's see what's going on here. In the primaries, maybe we can bump up the offset a tiny bit, just brighten things up a little, but not too much because we don't want to make the highlights peak. So I'll just bring up the lift tiny bit. I don't want to have that washed out look. It looks pretty good to me. That's just a quick clip. Let's apply it to this clip here. Very minimal. I'd rather apply maybe this grade, not too green. Let's see this one. That looks good to me. Shift D before and after. Clean, simple, clean. Not much that I would really want to do with this clip. You don't have to go that hard with all these clips, you know, like the adjustments that you've made on one clip, a lot of the time they're going to look good on a lot of other clips. So in a lot of situations, you're not going to have to go in and use the qualifier and make individual changes. If it looks good to you and you just want to make some minor primaries changes, go for it. But you don't have to go like really hard with every single clip here. This looks pretty good to me. I know that this like bluer white balance is kind of baked into this clip. So can't really play around with the temperature too much, but I'll just bring it up a tiny bit just to make the mountains a bit more yellow, give it that sunrise feeling. Let's compare all these three clips together. Just make sure that they vibe, you know, they feel good. Shift D before and after. This last clip over here, it does have that washed out vibe because we brought up the lift. So if we go back to our primaries on just this clip, bring that down. I don't want it to be too washed out. Minimal. Even that is still a bit too washed out. It's okay. This is going to be more of just like a silhouetted shot. But if we go back to our split screen, these look pretty good. I would say this clip could probably use even more of that temperature, make it a bit warmer, and that kind of unifies things even more. I do like this. I feel like before this clip, Option D, by the way, is to disable all the nodes on the selected clip. Option D is to disable all the nodes. Shift D is to look at the original, but for everything. And then Command D is to just disable individual nodes. But Option D will disable all the nodes. Those are important shortcuts. But yeah, I'm stoked with this. Shift D, turn it back on. All of these, they look pretty coherent. The saturation in the mountain here is a bit more intense, but that's totally fine for my preference. I like the way that this looks. So let's go over here. Let's apply this grade from this longboard shot. It's pretty simple. It's not that intense. Let's apply that to this clip of me here, see what it looks like. Looks pretty good, but I'm gonna actually undo that. Let's take a look at some of these stills that we've created previously. I'm gonna turn off split screen so I can see them. Yeah, I guess I thought that this one might work better. I feel like it's blowing out the sky a little bit too much. But because this is from the same area as the previous clip, let's just apply it, play around with it. Maybe we can modify things a little bit. The sky, we got the car here. The car is in a completely different place, so we can see that that same mask that we had, that same window that we created for the car in that previous shot in the other lesson, it is being applied to this clip, and obviously it doesn't make any sense here. So let's reset that node over there. You want to be mindful of these things to make sure that we don't have random masks being applied to a bunch of different things. The sky here, it's too pink, kind of doesn't feel right to me. So let's just bring the key output down a tiny bit. Command D, view before and after. Just that tiny bit of pink helps. And why don't we compare this to the other clip that we graded previously? Select that, split screen view, selected clips. We can see they look pretty good together. Obviously the sky here is much pinker, but that's totally fine because this could be different times of day, you know. The water here in this clip, maybe it's a bit too green, so why don't we, instead of making this the car, we can change this to water. And let's go to our qualifier. We got to turn split screen off. Let's select the water over here. Make sure qualifier is selected. Shift A to show us what we're selecting. Cool. Of course, we're affecting a lot of other things as well here. If we want to make a selection just around the water, we'd probably have to combine the qualifier with a power window as well. But let's see what we can do just with this. So why don't we go into our curves, the hue here. I think this is probably the range that we want to be playing with. And I'd want to just push it down a tiny bit. So normally it's like that, tiny bit. And it's okay that we're affecting everything else in the image too, and not just the water. Shift D before and after. Command D to turn that one node on and off. Let's zoom in on the water, see what it's doing. Very minimal. You guys might not even be able to see the difference. I don't want to push it too far because then it starts to make things look a bit purple. But that's the thing though, like with color grading, you want to make the most minor adjustments in some situations. And to me, I can see this tint changing. This is off, on, off, on. The change looks minuscule, tiny, like barely noticeable. For me, I can notice it clearly actually, but I hope that you guys can also see it through the compression. But that small, slight change in the water is, I think, exactly what we needed. So why don't we compare those two clips again? Go back to split screen over here. The water. So let's turn this on and off. Green, bluer. Minimal adjustments. That's really it. And it's so great to have this split screen feature to be able to shot match like this. Of course, we could play around. We can intensify the sky as well and make it a bit pinker if we want to by changing the key output here. You turn it on and off. That's what it looks like before, what it looks like after, just to get it to match there a bit more. I might even want to bring down the highlights a tiny bit. You could either do that in curves or in the primaries. Oh, that looks better too. Just bringing down the highlights in the sky, because before they were a bit too bright. Now these two clips look good side by side, but let's take a look at just this clip and just make sure that things don't look like off or weird or anything like that. No, I would say that things look pretty good. Let's see maybe what's going on with the skin tones here. You can see everything's kind of scattered. Let's just reorganize things. Noise reduction, we don't need any noise reduction. What's going on here? This is final node. Also don't need this one here. Skin tones, let's verify. Skin tones look good. I would say that I don't even need to verify actually. I'm happy with those skin tones. Those feel good to me. And yeah, guys, this is the general process. I'm just going to continue to go through my timeline just like this. I'm going to apply previous grades to new clips to see if they work. I'm going to experiment with the saved stills I have in my gallery. If there's a clip, that I find doesn't look good with any of the previous stills that I've made, I'll go back into my LUTs, play around with the LUTs that I have here from the KC LUT pack, or, any of the LUTs that come with DaVinci Resolve or any of the LUTs that you download yourself. Play around with them, experiment, see what looks good. But feel free to, apply previous grades that worked well in other scenes to other scenes and see if they work well, make the adjustments necessary to make them work if they don't. But this is the general process of how I like to color grade my timelines. Once, everything is color graded in my timeline, what I'll do is just open up Lightbox, take another look at things here, just make sure that I like the way that everything feels. I'll probably bring up the size of the thumbnails here too, scroll through them and just make sure that I like the way that everything is looking. So right now I can see that I can apply this LUT to one of the other acro clips here. So this one can be applied to this one here. That looks good. We could apply this one to this one here too, this one here too. And of course they're pretty intense. We're gonna wanna make those same adjustments as before. Probably bring down the opacity of the LUT here, make those same minor changes. We can see we have some green leaking over here. I'm not sure what that is. Looks like it's from this node here. But yeah, that's the general vibe. I think the most important thing for me is to select a handful of clips from my entire project and grade them in a way that I think works well for me. Feel free to create multiple versions of grades for each clip. That's totally fine. Save all those different looks as stills within your gallery, and then that way you can always go back to your gallery, apply different looks to different scenes, and make modifications from there if you feel the need to. But yeah, this is pretty much my process of color grading an entire timeline. I don't want to go through the entire thing. I think that that's going to be pretty time consuming, but you guys get the gist of things. You've learned a lot. We've learned how to use a base node tree. We've learned how to update our base node trees. We've learned how to use group clips, even though in this situation, group clips might not really make the most sense. We know how to use them in scenarios where they can be very beneficial. That is my process of color grading this timeline. Of course, keep in mind, this is a shorter video. It doesn't really make sense for me to use remote grades or group clips as much in this scenario. But when you're working on much more extensive projects, for example, like the next time I make a My Year video or something along the lines of like Hey Tim, like a short film project or documentary style video, I'll definitely be using remote grades and group clips a lot more. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you in the next one.